If you asked me to describe summer, I would say that it is a season filled with lots of energy, lots of laughs. You always have plans, there's trips to look forward to, and obviously all of the spontaneity and late nights can be super fun. However, also for me though, at the ripe age of 31, sometimes they also totally throw me off my axis and require me to backtrack a bit if I'm not careful about how I kind of approach going to all of these plans and making sure that my social battery is charged and trying to regain some semblance of consistency and a routine that I work so hard to curate and cultivate that can seemingly go out the window all at once just after one weekend. We've already been traveling so much this summer. I feel like basically every weekend we've been gone, at least for Saturday night too. And to make sure that I can try to find some sense of balance in my life during a busy season, I am going to be sharing with you the habits that really help keep me grounded and, frankly, that keep me sane. When it feels like the days are flying by and I'm struggling to center myself, these are the things that really help me feel like me, acknowledge my routine, and acknowledge the type of life that in general I like to choose to be living. Obviously, I want there to be room for spontaneity and fun and plans and all the things that come with summer. So I'll talk a little bit about morning rituals, hobbies, how to plan your weeks, and scheduling check ins with your friends, your partner, and obviously, most importantly, yourself. Before we get into the topic of today's episode, let's first do a little create and consume. So, for what I've been creating this week, I have basically taken the last 2 weeks, like sort of off ish from social media, like more so from Instagram and TikTok. I deleted the apps from my phone for a week, like a Monday to Friday, and I found that really helpful and clarifying just to kind of take a step away and recharge. I always try to do this a couple times a year. And even when I came back to posting, I wasn't necessarily like making a lot of new content. If anything, I was sharing some carousels, photo dumps, kind of reusing some old footage and just throwing up a couple of things here and there so that I was still showing up, even though I wasn't posting like brand new content. And this week, I am trying to get back into creating more content. And honestly, you guys, I've been enjoying the podcast so much. I love getting to chat with you guys every week. And I'm trying to kind of take that feeling into my short form content as well, because I think it'll make everything feel a lot more connected. I feel like this is the true version of myself. And, especially on like the podcast and I would say on my YouTube channel as well, that's where I really showcase my personality, my opinions, and where I feel like you and I get to build like a deeper connection. And so I'm just trying to bring that over to short form too. So yesterday I posted a video just called 4 Things That I'm Weirdly Passionate About to share a little bit about myself. And, I'm just like touching up my makeup in the video and talking to the camera. And I've already gotten so many fun comments on that. A lot of people who agree with me about these things that I'm weirdly passionate about, and some people who disagree with me. Obviously, I think they're insane for that, but everyone's entitled to their opinion. So if you want to hear the 4 things that I'm weirdly passionate about, I will link that reel in the show notes of this episode for you guys. And for what I'm consuming this week, there's not a ton to go off of right now, but I am keeping my eyes peeled for any and all content from Taylor and Travis's wedding, which did in fact happen this past weekend, if you're listening to this episode as it airs, at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Now, I was a Madison Square Garden non-believer when I first saw that news break, but it actually ends up making so much sense when you factor in security and the fact that she knows the venue, and obviously the fact that they could bring in literally anything that they want to make the space what they wanted it to be. Early descriptions from people who were there saying it was almost like a fairy wonderland, which just makes me so happy for her and for him too. And to everyone who was mad that they were like shutting down the streets and stuff, to that I say, have you ever been to New York on the 4th of July? Because everybody clears out of the city. It's actually one of my favorite times to be in the city, although ironically I was not there this past weekend, because you can go to any of your favorite restaurants. You can walk around without people elbowing you. The only places that really get crowded are by the waterfront in the evenings where people want to watch the fireworks. And otherwise, the city is usually a ghost town for most of the weekend. And they also donated $26 million dollars to different charities in and around the city, which I think is an amazing gesture. And again, we really haven't gotten much content from the wedding itself yet. Maren Morris did post this adorable little embroidered I guess, handkerchief that all the guests got, like in lieu of tissues. And the embroidery had their logo on it, which I love that she made a logo for the wedding. Obviously, that makes so much sense, along with "So It's Gonna Be Forever" embroidered on it. And then we did see a leak of the invitations, which said, Taylor and Travis getting married July 3rd, Manhattan. And the visual of it was just a gorgeous, like, golden sunset. And that kind of encapsulates her song, The Fate of Ophelia, where she references the land, the sea, the sky, because you can see all three in the invitation. Also, can we talk about the fact that Taylor Swift and I both had crazy rainstorms on our wedding days? I mean, if that's not some alignment there, I don't know what is. If you haven't heard the story of mine and Andrew's wedding day, I will link that podcast episode for you in the show notes. If you're still kind of in a wedding state of mind and you haven't heard this story yet, it is kind of a crazy one, but I'll leave it for that episode. And as always, don't forget to let me know what you're creating and consuming as well, because I'm a nosy girl. I want to know what you're watching, what you're reading, what you're making. If you have a social post that you're really proud of, send it my way. I would love to see it. And with that said, let's dive into the topic of today's conversation, which is the habits that keep me grounded in busy seasons of life. And I haven't really done an episode like this in a while, but I do personally love just having habits. I think that building habits and creating these recurring little rituals that you do for yourself are just one of the most like cute and human things that we can do. And I find them so incredibly beneficial, especially when they are really repeatable and when you can kind of build upon all of the habits you create to start with something that seems really simple, but actually build it into something that could be a lifelong interest or passion or, I guess, habit of yours at the end of the day. So if you have not yet read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, I do really recommend it. It's a good start of year read, but also if any of you guys are doing a mid-year reset or looking for any of that type of content right now, it's a nice thing to read this time of year too, if you're trying to get back on track with some of your goals, if you feel like you've maybe fallen off of them or you need a little bit of guidance, or maybe you are struggling to like find routine and everything. It is a super helpful resource. So I will link it for you guys in the show notes. And I feel like after reading this, it really set the tone for me about what kind of life I want to live and what kind of habits I want to actively work into my routine and make sure that I'm completing each week to be the best version of myself, whether that means maintaining a consistent workout routine, whether that means doing grocery shopping on a particular day of the week, whether that means continuing to create content and try new things and formats and show up for myself because I enjoy the process so much. So all of these habits are kind of the little puzzle pieces to help you become the best version of yourself. And I do find that it's hard to do in busy seasons, especially during the summer months where people maybe have a little bit more flexibility. Maybe some people are able to work from home more, or maybe you're a teacher and you have off for the summer. Like there is just a little bit more room. And also there's a lot more daylight, which I know that it's been really hot lately. If you guys also just survived the heat wave that we had here in early July, I know you probably were like dying for winter, but let's just remember how cold winter was and how much we were hoping for the warmth. And for me, what I truly love about summer is not just the warmth, but really the extended daylight, just to be able to get up at like 5:30 or 6 because that's when the sun is coming up, and to have the sun go down at like 8:30. What a game changer. So I'm enjoying the extended daylight that we have right now, even though, of course, it's like dreary and overcast today as I'm recording this episode. And as I mentioned at the top of this episode, we've been away a lot. We obviously had our Nantucket trip. We have another trip in August that I'm really looking forward to. The next 2 weekends, we have some wedding related festivities for one of Andrew's cousins. So there is kind of a lot that happens all at once in the summer. I feel like when it rains, it pours. And that's obviously a good thing. I'm very extroverted, so I love like getting out and like seeing people and hanging and making plans. But even though I'm an extrovert, I still really crave the routines and rituals that keep me grounded. So let's go through some of these. And I would say these are in no particular order, just because so many of them kind of tie into each other. And there wasn't really a clear chronological or like in a particular order way to do this. So starting out with filling in my Notion hub. Now, I think I've sung the praises of Notion many times on this podcast, but just in case you haven't heard me do it, Notion is essentially How would I describe it? It is kind of a note taking software, but it is also a calendar. You can use Notion for your email. I personally haven't gotten there yet. I'm on Gmail and I don't really have any plans of switching right now. But Notion can also be a project manager. You can also fill out forms with Notion. You can really do a lot in there. And when I first tried to use Notion, I kind of poked around for maybe like 20 minutes and then I gave up. It wasn't until I want to say 2022 or 2023 when I finally like watched a bunch of YouTube videos, learned how to use Notion, and sat down to develop my Notion system where everything really clicked for me. So I do have tabs on my Notion where I store things like all of my brand contacts. I store information about brand partnerships, like which stage of the process I'm in. Am I waiting for review from a brand? Do I need to submit an invoice? Like all of that is in Notion. But I think the greatest thing that I have made for myself in Notion is my yearly goals and planning hub, because not only is this the place where I plan and track all of my goals for the year, but also within this system, I have created quarterly breakdowns and then monthly breakdowns and then even weekly breakdowns. So everything is all in this one system. So, like, my to do lists for the day are also right under the umbrella of like which goal they're related to and what I'm working towards so that I can make sure I'm making the best use of my time. This is also where every single podcast episode outline is stored, like what I'm reading off of from my phone right now. If you're watching on YouTube, this is what I have in Notion. And, it's very bulleted, so I can kind of take a point and then riff off of it. It's not like a word for word script or anything. But the fact that that's all in there, all my YouTube video ideas are in there. I also store things like recipes. I write little reviews for myself of books that I've read. I like to kind of store them there versus putting them out on Goodreads. It just really has everything. And I also love that in this system, I have created questions for myself that I answer at the end of each month. So I go in and I say, like, what were my wins from this month? What were some challenges? What was like my top performing piece of content? I just really love that everything is in one place, and it kind of creates a feedback loop where I can write out what went well at the end of each month and then also the end of each quarter, so that by the time I am reviewing my goals at the end of the year, I don't have to be like, what was I doing in April? I can literally go back and see not only the big wins and takeaways, but if I wanted to know what I was doing on a specific day, that to-do list and everything is just all linked in there. This hub also comes with a little mid-year reset worksheet, which is essentially a set of questions and prompts, like what went well at the beginning of the year and what do I want to focus on in the second half of the year. So if this sounds like something that would be helpful to you, I will link it in the show notes. I have this as a template that's available for you guys. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to slide into my DMs or leave a comment wherever you're watching or listening to this episode. Another habit that keeps me grounded is using the Peloton app for my workouts. And I did an episode a couple weeks back about how to be the healthiest version of yourself, where I talked a lot about like how I first got into a really good routine with working out and why I credit the Peloton with a lot of that. And that TikTok actually got a lot of comments and love, including from Rebecca Kennedy, who's like one of my favorite strength instructors. And I was like, Rebecca, I take your classes. This is so weird that you're commenting on my TikTok. So anyway, if you have heard of Peloton, you're probably generally familiar with the Peloton workout bikes. I have one. I just have like the original bike. I know they've made newer versions of it and have the Bike Plus, whatever. We got this bike in 2021, so we've had it for about 5 years now. And then outside of the equipment that they sell, you can also use the app without having the treadmill or the bike or whatever. So what I like about the app is that I can just take it on the go with me anywhere. So in my ideal world, I am getting in at least 3 rides on my bike each week, and I typically do them on Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Over the summer, the Saturday session typically gets moved to Friday morning if we have weekend plans, or if I'm going to be away, sometimes it just gets skipped just because that's the nature of, okay, I'm physically away from the bike. I can't do anything about that right now. But even when I don't have the bike in front of me, I will choose to do workouts on the app. And they have a lot of like body weight workouts. So I have done workouts, in a hotel room where I'm just like, I literally only have 10 minutes. I don't have any weights or anything with me. So what can I do just with my body right now to move? And I love that I can turn to the app for stuff like that. I would also say that one big reason that this is a habit that I keep coming back to is because of the app and how I can track everything, because as a rule for my own mental sanity, I do not weigh myself. Like, I just know that I would very much fixate on whatever that number is. I literally don't know what it is, but I do like data and I like tracking things. So, what I enjoy about the Peloton app experience is that I can work towards metrics that are not directly tied to like my weight. I can work towards metrics like a 3 week streak or a 3 day streak. I mean, I'm up to over like 180 something week streak at this point, which I, again, completely credit the Peloton like app and system for doing. I can also earn different badges. So, like, I get a little, badge on my profile if I do 10 cycling workouts in a month, which I always manage to do. And then it goes up to from bronze, silver, and gold. So you can kind of keep working towards those metrics. I also love that it tracks your total minutes spent working out in any given year. It's called the annual challenge. So, like, my main workout goal for this year has been to add in more strength workouts, which I do think I've been doing, and also to just increase my overall workouts from the total minutes from last year. So last year, I think I hit 4,000 minutes in total. So my goal for this year is to hit like 5,000 minutes working out, just to do more than I did last year. And I like goals like that where I can still measure what's going on, but I don't have to fixate on something that's going to make me spiral and drive me insane. I do actually have a link in here for a 60-day free trial of the Peloton app. I believe there's some kind of limit on this, so I don't know how many people I can share this with, but I can drop the link in the show notes in case any of you have been wanting to try it, because I don't necessarily know anyone in my personal life, unless you're listening to this and you know me personally. DM me and I could send you this link also, who have mentioned like wanting to use it. So, but if you're listening to this and you're like, I would try that, feel free. Another habit that keeps me grounded that I have really honed in on, I would say in the last 3 years, is reading physical books. Now, we've talked a lot on this podcast about 2026 being the year of analog hobbies, and I think this is definitely my favorite one. Getting in the habit of reading consistently each week has been amazing for my mental health. Like, I just love having a hobby that's not screen related, but something that's still really interesting and engaging, where I feel like I am, again, either entertained by the story that's going on, where I get sucked in, or where I can even admire like the writing and the character development. And I just enjoy it so, so much. I would say my preferred reading time is definitely first thing in the morning. So on the mornings that I'm not doing my Peloton workouts, which is usually like Tuesdays, Thursdays, sometimes Fridays, and then Sundays, I love getting up and reading first thing. I love making my coffee. Sometimes I'll light a candle, or if it's winter, I'll like turn on the fireplace and cozy up. And that's my favorite reading time because it's before anything else really in the day has started. And it's just a chance, even if it's for 15 minutes, to sit down and do something that doesn't involve a screen and just get my creative gears turning at the beginning of the day, whether I'm trying to figure out why a character is making a certain decision that they shouldn't be making, or what's happening if there's a mystery. And I really love reading all different types of books. I would say that I kind of come back to my comfort books a lot of the time, which is like either a romance or a cozy mystery or just regular fiction. But I also still try to venture outside of that. And I also will occasionally read, I don't know, something that's just not in my normal cup of tea. Like, I would argue Project Hail Mary, if you had described that book to me, I would have been like, no interest, thanks though. And it was one of my favorite books that I've read this whole year already. Ideally, I would also be reading before bed more. I was okay about this for a little while, but I have to say the World Cup and Love Island being on every single night, basically for the last like 6 weeks, has really thrown me off. Like, I've been watching just a lot of TV and then like going right to bed, which is not great. So that'll be over though. Love Island, the last game is this Sunday, and then the World Cup final will be the following Sunday. So by the end of July, maybe I'll be back to reading before bed again. And I'm curious, for any of you who have a Kindle, this is something that I feel like I ask every couple of months, is like, should I get a Kindle? I feel like it would be most helpful for traveling because I tend to prefer reading physical books, but obviously when I'm packing for a trip, it does limit what I can bring with me. And I usually end up just bringing like an 831 stories novella, which is great because they are typically less than 200 pages and I can read them pretty quickly. But if I end up, with a canceled flight or something, or I'm stuck at the airport, or I end up waking up super early because I'm jet lagged, it might be helpful to have a little bit of extra reading material. And if you are in search of an analog hobby, I do really recommend reading. If you're not into reading, some other ones that are big right now are cooking and baking. A lot of people are still in their sourdough era, learning how to bake. I've been making a lot of homemade pasta, which I also enjoy. Painting can be a good one. You could just buy like a watercolor set for 20 bucks on Amazon and use printer paper. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. And then a lot of the girls are into needlepoint lately. I feel like this is a hobby that requires just a little too much of an investment of both money and time, where I might not want to continue on with it after starting. So I haven't pulled the trigger on that one yet, but definitely some things to think about. And if you have an analog hobby that you love that I haven't mentioned, please reach out and tell us what it is. Okay, another habit that I genuinely feel like keeps me grounded even when I'm on the go is walking. Walking is just the easiest and freest way to get movement in. What I'm trying to say is that it doesn't cost any money to walk anywhere. I also love that walking is truly something I can do on the go. Even if you're traveling and it's like a rainy day, check to see if where you're staying, the hotel has a gym and you could walk on the treadmill for a little bit. I don't know, going on a walk always makes me feel better. Usually it gives me a chance to clear my head, or sometimes I just want to run a quick errand and, take a step away from my laptop or whatever it is I'm doing to get back in my own thoughts and my own body for a minute. And I just absolutely love it. I thought it would be fun to give you like a rapid fire, my hot girl walk essentials. So in an ideal world, if I'm going on a hot girl walk, which is like a long walk around the neighborhood, I am usually wearing a baseball cap of some kind. Currently loving the custom ones that I had made on Etsy last year for Taylor's Bachelorette that say East Jones Street on them. That's where we stayed when we were in Savannah for her trip. I do love my Calpac belt bag for a hot girl walk, and I wear it diagonally across my body. This is just the best way to be hands-free, and I can easily fit like my phone, AirPods, hand sanitizer, wallet, whatever else I need in there. Ideally, I'm doing a walk in my Nike Zoom Vomero 5 sneakers. I bought these, I want to say like a year or two ago, and they get so much wear for me. Like, I just love putting them on. They feel very supportive, but they're also super, super comfortable. Love those. And then ideally, I have a beverage with me. Is it a nice coffee from one of my favorite local coffee shops? Maybe, depends what time of day it is. If it's after 4 p.m., I probably shouldn't be having that coffee. Maybe I'll just bring a little bottle of water with me, or a can of sparkling water, like a Spindrift moment. That's always fun in the summer months. And then obviously sunglasses. I'll link the ones that I wear all the time from Amazon in the show notes of this episode. In fact, I'll link all of these things down below. And then a pair of bike shorts. I have found that the 5-inch inseam is my favorite. The 8-inch is like too long. I did also recently get a pair of 3-inch inseam just because they were on sale at American Eagle, or Aerie from American Eagle, when I was checking out, and it was either like buy that or like pay for shipping. And I'm one of those people who will always justify like it was free shipping, even though I had to buy an extra item. But anyway, they were on sale and they're 3 inches and I don't mind them, but like, I don't think I would wear them out of the house. I think that those are an in the apartment with a big t-shirt type of short. So the 5-inch ones are where it's at for me. When I was making this list also, I was kind of thinking about the morning ritual and just how I like to start my day. So obviously this might vary a little bit depending where I am if I'm not at home, but in general, like the 3 things that I always do like to check off in the morning are having coffee, which we were at Andrew's mom's this past weekend because we went on the boat on Friday and then we were going to stay over, and the power went out Friday night and it still hadn't come back by Saturday morning. And, we survived the night without AC. Like, we didn't have access to the internet because there was no Wi-Fi and then the cell towers were down. And all I could think when I got up in the morning was, I just need a cup of coffee. And then I realized that I needed electricity to use the Keurig. And I was like, oh my God, this actually might be what sends me over the edge. Like, I've been fine up until this point, and now that I know I can't have my coffee in the morning, I'm going to be a disaster. Don't worry. We did go to Starbucks shortly after that. All was resolved. But usually having a cup of coffee is essential for me starting my day. Like, there's just kind of no way around it at this point. And this is cup number 2, if you were wondering, if you're watching on YouTube. I would also say that either doing reading or a workout is essential as part of my morning ritual. I'm just so used to doing one or the other when I wake up now. So again, even if I'm not home and I can just go for a quick walk, or I can get a couple of pages in before my day starts, either of those 2 things are helpful. And then also making my bed. So even if I'm not at home, or even if I'm staying somewhere, just like flattening out the sheets, like putting the pillows back and getting somewhat organized, even if it's not perfectly made. I do still find that making my bed in the morning is something that I do like to do because it helps me with momentum for the rest of my tasks. It's like once you've made the bed, you've already accomplished that task and you can really build on that and just continue to do whatever else needs to get done after. And as a bonus, I do love to do eye patches or some type of morning skincare. So if I am traveling, I like to bring the Wander eye patches with me because they come in the individual pouches. Otherwise, I prefer to use the eye patches that come in a jar and I keep them in the fridge. I love that I'm able to keep them all in the fridge, and I also just prefer that packaging because obviously it's less wasteful than the individually packaged ones. So yeah, those are my morning rituals. Now, I also put on here meal planning as much as possible. And this is something that 21-year-old me would have been like, girl, who cares? Like, literally be quiet. Don't care about that. Next, move on, not interested. Okay, let me tell my 21-year-old self something. The food that you're putting in your body is probably not good. I mean, it's tasty, but like in general, it's going to make you lethargic. It's going to make you hate your life. So stop eating like takeout for every single meal, essentially. When I find a meal that I love, I pop it into the rotation as many times as possible, and bonus points if it's really easy to make. I think I talked about the salmon bowls last week on here that I've been obsessed with. I also have been loving this chicken meatballs recipe. I have a sausage and peppers recipe that literally takes like 20 minutes in the oven. That is such a no-brainer meal for me to make. So having a list of ones that are in my rotation are really helpful for me. Again, if I'm traveling, obviously I might not have all of the options that I would have if I'm at home, but if there is a chance to get something from a grocery store versus like a fast food type of place, or if I'm going to get fast food, just kind of knowing my typical go-to order from a place like Cava or even Chipotle, which might not be 100% healthy, but is at least something that I really like and is going to fill me up and make me feel good after I eat it. But you know, sometimes you do need a McDonald's crispy chicken sandwich, so it's not a perfect science, but just in general, trying to choose the slightly healthier option or the option that I can tell is going to energize me versus make me feel just really full and greasy and like tired. That's kind of stuff that I think about. And even going out to dinner, you know, you could order like the salmon or chicken over the steak. You know, you can make swaps that make sense for you. And I hope that doesn't come off restrictive in any sense as far as food goes. I just find for me, when I go off the rails and I'm eating like whatever, anything and everything that I want to for like days on end, my body can truly feel it afterwards. So that's something that I kind of try to keep in mind when I am on the go and when I'm in a busy season, because it can be easy to opt for like the easier option or the thing in the freezer. But if I can plan ahead, I will try to do that as much as I can. Another habit that keeps me grounded, I talked about this earlier, is setting boundaries with social media. So I talked about taking a week off from Instagram and TikTok, and in the past when I've done this, I've deleted the phone apps and I've also like logged out on desktop. I have to say the desktop doesn't have that same addictive quality to me where I just keep wanting to scroll. For desktop, I kind of just like popped in the morning, checked to see if I had any messages, and then I popped out and I was like, I should do this all the time. I have the apps on my phone to upload content, but even that you could be scheduling from desktop, I think, for both Instagram and TikTok. So I don't know. I do generally like to try to take 3 weeks off from socials throughout the year. But even if I can continue to find a better system that works for me so that I am just not getting into the habit of scrolling as much, I think that that is a good goal too. And ideally, I would like to just have better habits and boundaries with social media so that I don't need to like pull myself out of it for 3 weeks and be like, you can't have this because you've been addicted this whole time. And I think it's hard to do. I think we're just so used to having these things in our hands at all time, but deleting the apps from my phone was really helpful just to literally stop the scroll, because it's like, it's not there. What are you going to scroll? I will say that did lead me to scrolling on like Lemon 8 for a little while as an alternative, because I was like, well, TikTok's not here. And I don't know, again, still not the same addictive quality. It was like I was there for a couple minutes and then I kind of came off. I would also like to hear from any of you if you guys have tried the Brick. I've been thinking about getting one, which is basically this physical little thing that's a magnet that most people stick on their refrigerator. And once you brick your phone, in order to unbrick your phone and get out of the apps that you've had it block, you have to go physically up to the refrigerator to like tap your phone again and unbrick it. And a lot of people say that this has worked for them. And the only downside I could think of is obviously if you're out and about and you forgot to unbrick your phone, but they give you a certain number of like emergency unbricks so that you can get back into your accounts if needed. Another habit that keeps me grounded is to plan check-ins with my friends. So obviously giving them a call every once in a while, texting just to check in and say, how are you doing? Especially if I know it's like a busy time for them. I have one friend who has been working the World Cup the last few weeks. I have another friend who just had a baby. So, kind of just like texting them, seeing how things are going, reaching out and making the effort. I feel like sometimes, I don't know if this is really true or not, but I feel like sometimes my friends get a little extra insight into me and how I'm doing because if they see my content online, they might be like, oh, Austen posted today, she's fine. But I always appreciate when people also like check in with me offline too. And I try to make a point to check in with people as much as I can, and ideally also see people and get together with them as much as I can. One thing that's worked really well for a group of my friends from high school has been this idea of the 90-day dinner. I think Alexa might have seen it on TikTok first, where basically we try to make a plan where the five of us can get together at least every 90 days to get dinner somewhere. And we varied the location of dinner all the time. Sometimes we'll go out to a restaurant in the city. Sometimes we'll meet at someone's apartment and just order in. And wherever we are, it really doesn't matter. But the fact that the five of us do try to make a point to like still get together, it just makes me so happy. And I feel like 90 days is such a reasonable amount of time. And obviously, we see each other in between those things too. You know, some people might see each other in a group of like two or three in the middle of all of that. But it's always so nice when the whole gang kind of like gets together. So we have our next one on the calendar for August, and we had to just do that at the beginning of summer to be like, we know summer's crazy, just like pick one date and that's going to be our date to get together at the end of summer. This one might sound a little silly or surface level, but Pizza Fridays is a habit that keeps me grounded. And again, like I talked about, I usually try to eat healthy during the week. Obviously gets a little hard to do with traveling and stuff, but for me at the end of the week, I want pizza for dinner. Like we made it to Friday. That to me is like a little celebration. So in my ideal world, on Fridays, we are ordering pizza. And usually Andrew is very into this plan as well. Sometimes we'll order in. If it's nicer out, we'll often go out. There's a great place in Hoboken called 10th Street Pizza that's also BYOB. So that's just like so easy to do. And we can bring whatever we want and hang out there. There's just something about the ritual of knowing that the two of us have that plan every Friday and celebrating the end of the week in a sense. Is that the best habit to build towards, like eating a bunch of pizza every Friday? I don't know, but it's just something that makes me happy and that I'm going to do anyway. Okay, also having comfort shows or comfort creators to watch, especially if you're kind of on the go, or maybe it has been a little while since you've been able to get together with your friends, or you're traveling a ton this summer and it's really hard to get together. Having your comfort creators with you is just such a nice thing to turn to if, again, you kind of like would want to call a friend, but maybe you're exhausted and you don't have anything to say. So you can turn to someone who is a comfort creator to you to even have that kind of one-way conversation, even though ideally you might want to talk back, or it would be great if you could talk to each other. But to have that content where you feel like you're kept company and where you're kind of floating through life with someone, I find a great deal of comfort in that too. I think that when things are in flux, it is really nice to just seek comfort in familiar faces, voices, or storylines of people who you care about, even if it's a parasocial relationship and you haven't gotten a chance to meet in person. Some of the vloggers that I like to tune into each week who kind of act as comfort creators for me are Tara Michelle, Brooke Michio, Amber Burns, and Taylor Morello. I can link all of them in the show notes in case you are looking for any new vloggers to check out. And then I also love like my comfort watches. So, you know, if I'm traveling or on the go and I'm getting ready, maybe I will just throw on Gilmore Girls on Netflix or an episode of Gossip Girl or listen to one of my favorite podcasts. And if you guys want to hear all of my favorite comfort shows, you can listen to episode 105 of the podcast. That was my Mount Rushmore of pop culture, where I shared my top 4 TV shows, movies, and books and albums of all time. And then last but not least, the Sunday reset. You know it, you love it. I know it and love it and try to do it every week. For me, a Sunday is just really a day to plan ahead for the next week to make sure that it's going to be the best week ever. And I love on Sundays feeling productive. I love either making a grocery list or actually doing my grocery run. Sometimes my grocery runs end up being Monday mornings just because it's a little less chaotic than it is to go to the grocery store on a Sunday. Sunday is probably also going to be a day where I'm not really like drinking or making social plans. I really try to respect the sanctity of Sundays and what they are for me personally. I'll also try to plan out my week ideally, see what's coming up, and also make note of my schedule if there are any days I know I'm going to be in the city for events or working late or whatever it is, and also try to coordinate with Andrew so that when I am like meal planning and stuff, I know exactly which days I need to buy things for. I also love going through my inbox on a Sunday and scheduling things out on Monday morning. That way I can start my week knowing that I'm getting back to people or I'm answering anything that needed to get addressed over the weekend, but I don't have to start my Monday morning worrying about other people. I can start my Monday morning focused on my own stuff. And Sundays are also a nice time, I think, to like clean up the apartment, do like a quick 20-minute tidy, vacuum the floors. On the business side of things, maybe I'll open up my finance spreadsheet and update that, put in any like receipts from the week or things that I want to make sure are factored into my business income and expenses. And then ideally end the night with something comfortable. I've been making homemade pasta on Sundays, although of course not like the last 2 weeks while we've been traveling. Maybe watching an episode of Gilmore Girls before bed, that kind of thing, like a nice little evening wind down. And those are the habits that keep me grounded during busy seasons of life. Let me know if you guys have any to add to this list. Leave them in the comments. Like I said before, you can comment on YouTube if that's where you're watching, Spotify if that's where you're listening. Also, if you do have a second right now, if you could please take a moment to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts specifically. And ideally, if you could give 5 stars if you enjoyed this episode and you enjoy my other episodes, it helps more than you know to get those reviews in. And it really does help the podcast reach new listeners. Thank you guys again for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you all again next week.